They weren't just fast or rare, they were too fast, too wild, or too dangerous for anyone to handle. Built in secret, tested in silence, and then buried before the world could react, these machines crossed the line so far they had to be erased. No ads, no museum spots, no collector hype, just whispers and lost photos that prove they really existed. Here are 12 super banned cars ever made, and you've probably never seen a single one of them until now. The 1963 Buick Silver Arrow I wasn't just a car, it was a rolling promise that the future could arrive not tomorrow, but today. Conceived during a period when American automakers still dared to think in sweeping gestures and futuristic silhouettes, it embodied the kind of optimism and drama that once filled the great domed halls of auto shows. In that single silvered sculpture, Buick's designers attempted to answer a question that was both artistic and commercial. Could a traditionally conservative brand, known for plush, sensible sedans, reinvent itself with something so daring, so radically styled, that it would change the public's idea of what a Buick could be? When the Silver Arrow I debuted, it must have seemed like a visitor from a parallel timeline. The fastback roof flowed in an unbroken arc, giving the car a sense of perpetual motion even while stationary. Its headlights were hidden behind flush panels, a nod to the aircraft-inspired design language of the day, while the turbine-like details and impossibly slim roof pillars hinted at a new age of sleek minimalism and aerodynamic efficiency. It looked like it could slice through the air at 150 miles per hour, even if its true mission was simply to mesmerize crowds and spark conversations. And it did. Showgoers were entranced by the vision it presented, a personal luxury car that wasn't merely a more comfortable sedan, but a true statement of taste and modernity. Under its long sculpted hood sat a powerful Buick V8, lending mechanical credibility to the futuristic shape. Here was a concept car that wasn't purely fantasy. It drove, it ran, it moved under its own power. It looked in every sense like it could step directly from the turntable onto the open road. But as with so many concept cars of its era, reality intervened. Federal safety regulators, newly alert to crash standards and rollover protection, saw danger in the Silver Arrow I's delicate roof pillars and low-slung fastback. Engineers fretted over whether such a design could meet evolving safety requirements without losing its visual drama. Buick executives staring at spreadsheets and market research wondered aloud if their loyal buyers, who prized comfort and quiet elegance, were truly ready for something so radical, so aggressively modern. And within General Motors, there was an unwritten but powerful rule. Concept cars should tease, but not threaten the production models that actually paid the bills. By the time those questions had been asked, the Silver Arrow I had already become a beautiful problem no one wanted to solve. Production never happened. No softened version ever reached the showrooms. The lone concept, the car that had stolen spotlights and hinted at a different future for Buick, was quietly retired from the circuit. It passed from warehouse to museum collection, emerging only occasionally to remind enthusiasts and historians of what might have been. Yet its importance lingers because the Silver Arrow I represented a rare, fearless moment. It was Buick daring to ask, what if we didn't just follow the market, but redefined it? What if luxury wasn't only about chrome trim and plush seats, but about aerodynamic grace and sculptural daring? It was a statement that design could do more than decorate. It could transform, provoke, and inspire. Today, looking at the Silver Arrow I is a study in bittersweet contrast. Its styling is at once frozen in the early 1960s, and yet so bold it still feels contemporary. Its existence reminds us of the tension every automaker faces between vision and viability, between risk and reassurance. It is a glimpse into a path Buick could have taken, one that might have reimagined the personal luxury coupe not as a grand, soft-edged boulevard cruiser, but a futuristic, almost spacecraft-like grand tour. But in the end, the Silver Arrow I was undone not by lack of talent or imagination, but by the same forces that have quietly buried so many visionary cars: cost, caution, and corporate pragmatism. And so it lives on not as a production car, but as a single, gleaming whisper of what could have been. A reminder that sometimes the most interesting stories in automotive history are the ones that end with a question mark rather than a production line. It is, in the truest sense, a space-age Buick that never quite left the launch pad, yet somehow, decades later, still makes us look up and wonder. The 1974 ISO Veredo is one of those haunting footnotes in automotive history. A car so striking, so full of promise, and yet so hopelessly out of step with the cruel timing of the world around it. Born in Italy, but carrying an American heart, the Veredo looked every bit the part of a mid-1970s supercar revolution. Low, wide, and dramatic, with sharp-edged wedge styling that seemed to crouch and pounce even when the car was parked under dim museum lights. It was a glimpse into what ISO, the small Italian firm famous for the elegant Grifo and the brutish Rivolta, believed could be its future, if only the world were ready to meet it halfway. At its core, the Veredo was an audacious blend of worlds. ISO's formula had always been deceptively simple: wrap proven American V8 muscle in meticulously tailored Italian sheet metal. In the case of the Veredo, that muscle came from a Ford 351 Cleveland V8, tuned to produce both the rumble and raw power buyers expected. But the real magic was what surrounded it: a lightweight fiberglass body that carved the air with knife-edge precision, and an uncompromising mid-engine layout that spoke of racing ambitions and engineering confidence. It wasn't just about speed and a straight line. ISO envisioned a car that could dance through corners like the best of Maranello or Sant'Agata, with the accessibility and reliability of Detroit iron. To see the car in person, even today, is to stand in the presence of a ghost that never got to live its story. The canopy-like glasshouse gives the cockpit a spaceship feel, while the steeply raked nose and angular flanks echo the wedge design language that defined an entire era of Italian exotics. Every line seems taut and deliberate, the product of designers and engineers still believing that bold shapes could survive beyond the drafting room. It was built to turn heads, to spark envy and curiosity in the hearts of enthusiasts from Milan to Monaco. And yet, the timing could not have been worse. The early 1970s were an era of whiplash in the automotive world. Soaring oil prices, crushing emissions regulations, and shifting consumer priorities from raw speed to fuel efficiency and practicality. ISO, already a small company operating in a niche market, found itself increasingly cornered by forces far beyond styling studios and test tracks. The Veredo, unveiled in 1972 and refined into its 1974 prototype form, arrived at a moment when buyers weren't just hesitant about gas-guzzling supercars, they were actively running from them. Even the mightiest names in the Italian industry were scrambling to survive. For ISO, the pressure was existential. Plans for limited production quietly evaporated. The oil crisis made a mid-engined V8 sports car feel almost scandalous, and tightening European and American emissions rules created engineering challenges ISO couldn't afford to tackle. The company, already stretched thin, folded soon after, leaving the Veredo as little more than a tantalizing memory of what might have been. Today, only one prototype remains, preserved under museum lights and layers of dust, a lonely relic that whispers of ambition and artistry crushed under the weight of economic and political realities. It is a car without a road-going sibling, a family line that began and ended in a single breath. And yet, its very existence still provokes admiration and what-if speculation among collectors and historians. What if the oil crisis hadn't hit so hard? What if ISO had survived long enough to build even a handful of veredos? Would the brand have carved out a new legacy among the greats of the supercar world? In the end, the ISO Veredo stands as a beautiful contradiction, a V8-powered Italian thoroughbred the world simply wasn't ready for, launched in the middle of a global panic over fuel consumption and changing values. It was an uncompromising dream caught in the teeth of reality, a perfect example of how history can bury brilliance under the rubble of circumstance. And yet, precisely because it never made it to production, it retains a kind of fragile, untouchable magic, the eternal allure of the forgotten prototype that dared to dream too loudly at the wrong time. The 2001 Volkswagen W12 Nardo isn't just a forgotten concept car. It's one of the rarest creatures in automotive history. A fully functional, blisteringly fast supercar that was silenced not by mechanical flaws, market indifference, or shifting fashion, but by the cold, strategic fear of its own maker. Its story is a haunting reminder that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can build isn't something that fails, but something that succeeds too well. So well, in fact, it threatens the carefully balanced ecosystem of brands, hierarchies, and corporate visions designed behind closed doors. Born at the dawn of the millennium, the W12 Nardo was Volkswagen's answer to a question nobody had dared ask out loud. What if VW itself, the brand known for sensible Golfs and Passats, could produce a world-class supercar? It wasn't a half-finished prototype or a fiberglass shell wheeled onto motor show turntables under bright lights. No, the Nardo was real, raw, and terrifyingly good. Powered by a 6.0-liter W12 engine producing over 600 horsepower, it could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 3.5 seconds, and, even more impressive, sustain average speeds north of 200 miles per hour over 24 hours during its record-shattering run at the Nardo Ring in Italy. At the wheel, test drivers described it not as a handful or an unrefined brute, but as something astonishingly polished for a machine still wearing a prototype badge. It was comfortable, composed, stable at speeds that would make most cars twitch into the guardrail. The design, penned by Giugiaro at Ital Design, was elegant and severe, a perfect blend of supercar aggression and Teutonic restraint. It didn't scream for attention, but once you looked, you couldn't look away. And then, nothing. Despite engineering success and media acclaim, despite the headlines proclaiming Volkswagen had built a supercar that could humble a Ferrari, the W12 Nardo was quietly exiled from production consideration. Why? Because its very excellence posed an existential threat to Volkswagen's newly acquired crown jewels. By the early 2000s, Volkswagen had spent billions rescuing Bentley, relaunching Lamborghini, and resurrecting the mythical Bugatti badge, all to position itself as the master of Europe's ultra-luxury and hypercar market. A Volkswagen-badged supercar, faster than a Lamborghini Murcielago, cheaper than a Bentley Continental GT, more usable than a Bugatti Veyron, would have undermined that grand plan. Who would spend 2 or 3 times as much on a badge when the parent company sold something just as fast, just as beautiful, for less? In a sense, the Nardo wasn't just banned from production, it was buried alive, hidden in plain sight. Its speed records were real, its engineering was sound, but the quiet decision-makers at the top feared what it could do to the carefully stacked deck of luxury brands they had built. And so, despite being ready for production, the W12 Nardo never made it to the showroom floor. The handful of prototypes became rolling ghosts, driven occasionally to keep them alive, shown at auto shows as proof of what VW could do, then rolled back into the shadows so they wouldn't embarrass the brands Volkswagen had decided to prioritize. But yet, the legend of the W12 Nardo grew because of its forced obscurity. This wasn't a concept that failed crash tests or a half-baked idea that never worked outside the design studio. It worked, it won, and it was too good for its own good. It became the answer to a tantalizing question. What if the people who built it had dared to let it live? Imagine for a moment an alternate timeline where the W12 Nardo reached production. Perhaps it would have sold in small numbers, carving out a place alongside the Lamborghini and Bentley as a people's supercar. Or perhaps it would have flopped, too expensive for VW's image, too disruptive to the established pecking order. But we'll never know, because VW never let us try. Today, when enthusiasts whisper about lost supercars, they often mention the Nardo in the same breath as the Jaguar X220 V12 prototype or the Bugatti EB110 SS that almost was, machines that could have rewritten history but were muzzled by fear, timing, or politics. But what makes the W12 Nardo uniquely tragic is that it wasn't stopped by external forces, it was killed by its own family. Not because it failed to live up to the dream, but because it embodied it too perfectly. And so it remains, a footnote for many, a myth for some, and a reminder that in the car world, the boldest designs can be smothered, not by flaws, but by boardroom caution. A car too good, too fast, too right, and too dangerous for its maker's carefully balanced kingdom. The one that proved Volkswagen could do it, and then was silenced because, heartbreakingly, it could. The 1957 Cadillac Eldorado Brougham town car concept was more than just a car. It was Cadillac at its most theatrical, most unapologetically Baroque, and most determined to remind the world that American luxury could be as extravagant, maybe even more so, than anything built in Europe's grandest coach builders' halls. And yet, for all its glittering presence, this singular town car would prove that some dreams are simply too ornate, too heavy with impracticality, and too fragile to withstand the cold winds of reality, regulation, and changing times. Picture it. A formal, chauffeur-driven limousine that combined the hand-built exclusivity of the Eldorado Brougham with the classic silhouette of a town car, complete with a fully exposed chauffeur compartment up front and a glass-roofed jewel-box rear cabin reserved for the owner's privacy and indulgence. Painted in a stately two-tone, the car's lines were impossibly formal yet indulgently futuristic, with the kind of proportions that seemed drawn from a Golden Age Hollywood fantasy rather than a Detroit assembly line. It was less of a conveyance than a statement that luxury could transcend practicality, that prestige could mean riding as though your very presence deserved architectural grandeur on four wheels. Inside, the rear compartment felt like a cocktail lounge, deep leather upholstery, stainless trim, chrome everywhere the eye could linger, and that glorious glass canopy overhead to let sunlight flood in, or to allow the stars to dance above while city lights streamed past. No concern for weight, for wind noise, for anything so prosaic as fuel efficiency. It existed for the moment you stepped out onto the curb outside a gala, every camera flash glinting off the chrome, every passerby whispering who must be inside. But that same sense of decadent excess proved its undoing. By the late 1950s, the American public's tastes and federal regulators' gaze had already begun to shift. The exposed chauffeur compartment, once a mark of upper-class detachment, now seemed outdated, especially as concerns for crash safety, side impact strength, and even something as mundane as occupant comfort began to rise. And as Cadillac's engineers faced the realities of building such a complex, low-volume car, they discovered that the design's glass canopy would have posed serious structural integrity problems in a rollover or side collision. New side impact standards looming on the horizon were the final blow. At its core, the Eldorado Brome town car concept was a relic of a different age, one that prized symbolism and social theater above all else. By the end of the 1950s, the jet-age optimism that had fueled dream cars with flamboyant fins, panoramic glass, and exposed chauffeurs was giving way to something slightly more sober, if no less stylish. Cadillac itself would pivot from show cars dripping in Rococo indulgence to cleaner, crisper lines that hinted at restrained modernism. And so, only one town car was ever built. It lived a short life, dazzling audiences on the auto show circuit, then retreated quietly to storage. No production run followed, no parade of matching black town cars ever ferried dignitaries and Hollywood royalty. The luxury statement proved too bold, too ceremonial, and ultimately too fragile for a world about to embrace seatbelts, crumple zones, and the hard truths of practicality. Yet what survives is the legend, the vision of Cadillac at the absolute apex of its self-confidence, unafraid to craft something so grand it almost embarrassed itself by its own opulence. The car may never have made it past the concept stage, but in that brief spotlight, it showed how design can become sculpture, how a car can stop being transportation and become an expression of power and pageantry. In the end, the 1957 Cadillac Eldorado Brome town car concept reminds us that there is a place, however brief, for the wildly impractical in automotive history. It stood as a rolling contradiction, built to impress everyone except reality itself, and perhaps that's exactly why we still remember it. The dream was too ornate, too ceremonially extravagant to survive, but just perfect enough to never quite disappear from our collective imagination. The 1991 Lotus Etna remains one of the most captivating and bittersweet chapters in the history of automotive innovation. A story not just about engineering ambition, but about dreams crushed under the weight of harsh economic realities and shifting corporate priorities. Conceived at a time when the automotive world was rapidly evolving, the Etna represented Lotus's boldest attempt yet to transcend its niche as a maker of lightweight, driver-focused sports cars and step squarely into the arena of true supercars, the rarefied space inhabited by the likes of Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Porsche. Lotus, renowned for its mastery of chassis dynamics and lightweight construction, had never before ventured into the territory of high-powered, technologically advanced supercars with bespoke V8 power plants. The Etna was designed to change all that. Envisioned as a wedge-shaped, aggressive-looking missile on wheels, it bore the unmistakable design hallmarks of Peter Stevens, the gifted British designer whose work on the McLaren F1 had already set a new benchmark for supercar aesthetics. The Etna's sharp angles, low-slung profile, and aerodynamic silhouette weren't just for show. They were engineered to slice through the air with minimal drag and maximum downforce, a testament to Lotus's engineering DNA emphasizing performance and agility. Underneath that sleek exterior was what might have been Lotus's finest technical achievement, a brand new, compact, high-revving V8 engine crafted to deliver explosive power without sacrificing the trademark lightness and nimbleness Lotus prized so highly. This engine was not a mere adaptation of an existing unit, but a clean-sheet design aimed at competing head-to-head with Ferrari's naturally aspirated V8s and Porsche's turbocharged beasts. Paired with a chassis honed for razor-sharp handling and equipped with cutting-edge suspension geometry, the Etna promised to offer a driving experience that was both raw and refined, a car that demanded respect on the track but could be wielded with finesse on public roads. The interior of the Etna was designed with a driver-first philosophy. Unlike the often overly luxurious and heavy supercars of the era, the Etna's cabin was stripped down, functional, and focused entirely on enhancing the driver's connection with the car. The instrument cluster was futuristic, utilizing digital readouts that were ahead of their time, and ergonomics were crafted to ensure every control was intuitively placed. Lotus wanted this to be a supercar for enthusiasts, one that rewarded skill and engagement rather than just brute force. Yet behind the gleaming prototype and the fervent engineering efforts, dark clouds loomed. The early 1990s were turbulent for Lotus. Financial difficulties, compounded by changes in ownership and corporate strategy, created an environment where even the most exciting projects became liabilities. The costs of developing a brand new V8 engine and the supporting chassis technology were enormous for a relatively small company like Lotus, whose survival had long depended on nimble innovation rather than brute capital. With dwindling resources, Lotus executives and their parent companies made the pragmatic decision to scrap the Etna quietly, rather than take the risk of investing heavily in a supercar that might never be profitable. The Etna project was thus shelved without fanfare. The lone prototype, a gleaming symbol of what might have been, was tucked away in storage, virtually disappearing from public view for decades. It became a ghost car, often discussed in whispers at car shows, forums, and enthusiast circles, but never officially acknowledged or put forward for production. This quiet disappearance underscored a painful truth in the automotive world. Visionary ideas alone aren't enough to succeed. Market timing, financial backing, and regulatory climates all played decisive roles. For Lotus fans and automotive historians, the Etna remains a tantalizing what-if, a supercar that could have rewritten Lotus's history and challenged the dominance of Italy's and Germany's finest. Its story is one of lost potential, where brilliant engineering collided with the cold, unforgiving realities of the industry. The Etna wasn't just a car, it was a statement that Lotus could aspire to be more than a cult favorite. It could be a true contender in the supercar stratosphere. Today, the Etna prototype is a rare artifact of automotive ambition and heartbreak, reminding us that sometimes the most extraordinary creations never reach the road. They live on as legends, phantoms of possibility, dreams deferred but never extinguished. Lotus's Etna may have been silenced before its roar could be heard, but it continues to inspire hope that someday, in some form, the spirit of the Etna's daring will return, pushing boundaries once again and redefining what it means to build a true supercar. The 1973 Chevrolet XP882 Aerovet stands as one of the most intriguing what-if chapters in the saga of American automotive innovation. A vivid testament to a time when General Motors dared to dream big and break every rule in the book to reimagine its most iconic sports car, the Corvette. The Aerovet was far from a mere styling exercise or a futuristic fantasy. It was a bold engineering experiment that sought to redefine American performance by blending revolutionary design with cutting-edge powertrain technology, setting its sights on rivaling the best of Europe's exotic sports cars, particularly the legendary Porsche 911. At its core, the Aerovet was a daring departure from Corvette tradition. Instead of the familiar front-engine rear-wheel drive setup that had defined Corvettes since their inception, the XP882 featured a mid-engine layout. This configuration was highly coveted by racing cars and European supercars for its superior balance and handling characteristics, as it centralized mass closer to the middle of the car, allowing for sharper cornering and improved agility. The body itself was shaped like a sleek spacecraft, with dramatically sculpted lines, a sharply raked windshield, and gull-wing doors that lifted upwards to reveal a futuristic cockpit. Its overall silhouette evoked speed and precision, looking as if it had been plucked straight from the pages of a sci-fi novel or a Jetsons cartoon. Underneath this breathtaking exterior was the most controversial and innovative piece of engineering, a four-rotor Wankel rotary engine, a technology that was virtually unheard of in the American mainstream. The rotary engine promised smooth power delivery, high revving performance, and a compact size that freed up space for the mid-engine layout. Unlike traditional piston engines, the rotary worked on a completely different principle, using rotating triangular rotors inside a housing to generate power. It was lightweight and promised to deliver impressive horsepower without the bulk and vibration of big American V8s. The potential was immense, if it could be made reliable and efficient. Yet the AeroVet project emerged during an infamously difficult period for the American auto industry. The oil crisis of 1973 shook the world, quadrupling gas prices almost overnight and sending shockwaves through consumer markets. Suddenly, gas-guzzling performance cars were out of fashion, and fuel efficiency became king. Environmental regulations were tightening rapidly, with the Clean Air Act imposing strict emissions limits that rotary engines struggled to meet. Despite its innovation, the rotary engine was inherently thirsty and emitted pollutants that conventional engines were better at controlling. It was also less durable in early implementations, requiring frequent maintenance and specialized knowledge, making it a risky bet for mass-market adoption. Internal corporate politics at GM further complicated the AeroVet's future. Many executives were hesitant to commit to such an experimental platform amidst growing financial pressures and uncertainty. The company's traditionalists viewed the mid-engine layout and rotary powertrain as too radical a departure from the Corvette's established identity, fearing it could alienate loyal buyers. The timing was unforgiving. The combination of oil shocks, new government mandates, and conservative management meant the AeroVet was left to languish. The project was quietly shelved, and the rotary engine program was mothballed. For decades, the idea of a mid-engine Corvette with a rotary engine remained an alluring ghost in the archives. The AeroVet's impact, however, went beyond its immediate demise. It planted seeds of innovation that would eventually germinate into later Corvette generations. The mid-engine concept resurfaced decades later in the 2020 C8 Corvette, a car that finally realized what the AeroVet had dreamed of: a balanced, high-performance Corvette that could compete head-on with Europe's finest. While the rotary engine was never revived by GM, the courage to push boundaries embodied by the AeroVet continues to inspire engineers and enthusiasts alike. In the end, the AeroVet encapsulates the thrill and heartbreak of automotive progress, a beautiful dream halted by forces beyond engineering, a lost chapter that fuels the passion for what might have been, and an enduring legend that continues to shape the future of American performance cars. The 1989 Ferrari Mythos stands as one of the most breathtaking and visionary concept cars ever crafted by the legendary Italian design house Pininfarina in collaboration with Ferrari. Emerging at the tail end of a decade that saw supercar technology advance in leaps and bounds, the Mythos wasn't just another flash-in-the-pan design study. It was a bold, unrestrained expression of what Ferrari could accomplish if unleashed from the traditional constraints of production, regulations, and market pragmatism. It was built on the mechanical foundation of the Ferrari Testarossa, itself a revolutionary icon of the 1980s. But the Mythos pushed far beyond the Testarosa's boxy yet purposeful silhouette, delivering a car that looked less like a sports machine and more like a sculptural work of futuristic art. From its very first sketch, the Mythos was conceived as a show-stopping radical departure. The body was sharply angular yet harmoniously flowing, with razor-edged lines sweeping from the dramatic nose to the flared rear arches. The open cockpit design eschewed a traditional roof in favor of a canopy-like setup, enhancing the connection between driver and the surrounding environment, while emphasizing the car's racing-inspired essence. It featured twin large side intakes that served both as aggressive visual cues and functional elements to feed air to its ferocious power plant, and the rear end tapered off with a muscular stance that hinted at raw speed waiting to be unleashed. Mechanically, the Mythos was powered by the Ferrari Testaross's flat 12 engine, a 4.9-liter beast delivering around 390 horsepower, a remarkable figure at the time. The flat 12's low profile allowed the designers to sculpt the car's low and wide stance, emphasizing aerodynamic efficiency and an aggressive posture. Though the Mythos shared this mechanical heart with the Testarossa, the conceptual nature of the car meant it was never burdened by the compromises required for road-going usability. This freed Pininfarina to craft a design focused purely on aesthetics, performance promise, and sheer presence. Despite its jaw-dropping design and engineering pedigree, the Mythos was destined to remain a concept, an unreachable dream on wheels. The late 1980s and early 1990s were years of increasingly stringent safety and emissions regulations worldwide, especially in major markets like the United States and Europe. Such rules demanded crash safety features, emissions controls, and durability standards that a car as radical and bespoke as the Mythos simply couldn't meet without losing the very qualities that made it special. Furthermore, Ferrari's own corporate caution weighed heavily on the project. The company feared that releasing a car so extreme, so visually alien, and so focused on form over conventional function could alienate buyers or damage its prestigious image. The Mythos ultimately became a plaything for the ultra-wealthy and the privileged few. Only 2 examples were ever built, both commissioned by the Sultan of Brunei, a collector known for his unparalleled taste for rare and exclusive vehicles. These cars remained largely hidden from the public eye, becoming coveted museum pieces rather than road-legal machines. The Mythos thus entered the annals of automotive mythology as a what could have been, a tantalizing glimpse of Ferrari's boldest ambitions, frozen forever in concept form. Its legacy extends beyond mere rarity. The Mythos embodies the eternal tension between creativity and regulation, between visionary design and commercial viability. It serves as a reminder that for every revolutionary car that makes it to production, dozens of equally inspiring creations fall victim to external forces, laws, cost, and corporate conservatism. Yet these fallen angels often inspire future generations, seeding ideas and aesthetics that trickle down into mainstream automotive design years or decades later. Even today, the Ferrari Mythos stands as a symbol of automotive art at its most unfiltered and ambitious. It invites enthusiasts and dreamers alike to ponder an alternate reality. What if Ferrari had dared to push the envelope even further? What if this fearless, almost alien-looking machine had prowled highways and tracks, challenging competitors and redefining the supercar landscape? While these questions remain unanswered, the Mythos's indelible mark on design history endures. It reminds us that sometimes the most powerful statement a car can make is not in speed or numbers, but in its audacity to exist at all. In a world where practicality often dictates design, the Mythos is a glorious outlier, a rare star that burned bright but briefly, illuminating a path of limitless possibility, and forever reminding us why Ferrari is not just a car maker, but a creator of dreams. The 1995 Subaru Impreza 22B stands as one of the most iconic and revered rally homologation specials in automotive history. It was born directly from Subaru's fierce and relentless pursuit of dominance in the World Rally Championship during the early 90s, a period when the Japanese marque was rapidly transforming from a niche player into a global motorsport powerhouse. The 22B was built as a celebration of Subaru's third consecutive manufacturer's title in 1995, a feat that cemented its place among the rally elite. This wasn't just another sporty compact, it was a hand-built, limited edition beast crafted to embody the raw aggression, precision handling, and turbocharged fury of a true rally car, adopted for the road. What made the 22B so special was how it combined aggressive performance upgrades with striking, purposeful design. Underneath the widened, flared fenders, done to accommodate its broader track and beefier wheels, was a heavily tuned 2.2-liter turbocharged flat-4 engine that delivered a brutal, immediate power surge. The suspension was uprated with stiffer springs, beefed-up bushings, and more precise dampers, giving it razor-sharp handling on tarmac and gravel alike. The car's rally heritage was unmistakable, from its deep front air dam and huge rear spoiler to the famous wide-body stance that exuded confidence and menace. Inside, the 22B remained true to its racer roots, offering a more stripped-down, driver-focused cabin with supportive Recaro seats and minimal distractions, emphasizing driving purity. While Japan was treated to this extraordinary performance machine in a strictly limited run of just 424 units, Subaru had its sights set on the lucrative and enthusiastic American market, where rally fever was heating up fast. Fans in the US eagerly anticipated a chance to get their hands on this homologation hero, imagining it as the ultimate rally-inspired street car that could easily double as a weekend track toy and daily driver. Unfortunately, what should have been a glorious entry for the 22B into the American sports car scene was thwarted by a complex maze of regulatory hurdles. The mid-1990s were a time of increasing governmental scrutiny over vehicle safety and emission standards in the United States. These regulations were often designed with mainstream family sedans and economy cars in mind, making it incredibly difficult for a limited production, highly modified performance car like the 22B to gain official certification. The wide bodywork, aggressive suspension setup, and specially tuned turbo engine all conspired to push the car beyond acceptable limits for crash safety and exhaust emissions. Subaru, despite its enthusiasm and engineering efforts, was ultimately forced to cancel plans to officially bring the 22B to the American market. This was a significant blow, not just to Subaru's marketing strategy, but to the US enthusiasts who saw the 22B as a dream machine denied to them. Yet the story of the 22B in America didn't end with a simple no. The car quickly achieved a sort of forbidden cult status among hardcore Subaru fans and rally aficionados. Instead of giving up, many owners and collectors began importing 22Bs through the gray market, navigating the costly and legally risky process of bringing these rare machines into the country despite the absence of official approval. Importers faced daunting challenges: complex emissions conversions, crash safety modifications, and the constant threat of legal repercussions or impoundment. But for those willing to fight the battle, owning a 22B became a badge of honor, a symbol of passion, determination, and a refusal to settle for anything less than the best rally-inspired performance available. Over time, this underground influx of 22Bs helped solidify the car's reputation in the US as the ultimate forbidden rally car, raw, powerful, and unapologetically aggressive. Its turbocharged flat-4 engine delivered an exhilarating surge of power that made it a blast on both the road and the dirt, while the wider track and upgraded suspension gave it confidence and precision previously unseen in a compact car from Japan. With its aggressive styling and authentic motorsport pedigree, the 22B wasn't just a vehicle, it was a statement, a rolling testament to Subaru's rally heritage and an emblem of what performance cars could be when built without compromise. Today, the Subaru Impreza 22B holds a near mythical status, both as a piece of rally history and as a prized collector's item. Its rarity, combined with the mystique of its banned U.S. status, has only amplified its allure. Car enthusiasts view it as a holy grail, an uncompromising, turbocharged legend that overcame legal roadblocks and regulatory opposition to become an icon of rally-inspired performance. For those lucky enough to own one, The 22B is more than just a car. It's a badge of devotion, a celebration of Subaru's golden era of rally racing, and a reminder that sometimes the greatest automotive legends are born not from what's allowed, but from what's forbidden. Would you go through the lengths to import one? To own a car that was too fierce, too wild, and too advanced to be welcomed by the American authorities? For many fans, the answer is a resounding yes. The Subaru Impreza 22B is not just a forbidden rally car, it's a symbol of passion, perseverance, and pure driving thrill that no law could ever extinguish. The 1967 Chevrolet Astro I stands as a beacon of mid-century automotive audacity and futuristic imagination, a gleaming testament to a time when carmakers dared to dream beyond the bounds of practicality and conventional design. Emerging from GM's experimental design studios, the Astro I was less a car and more a vision, a high-concept fusion of aerospace technology and automotive ambition, wrapped in a sculptural, bubble-domed silhouette that seemed to defy the very laws of aerodynamics and automotive tradition. At first glance, the Astro I's styling was nothing short of revolutionary. Its canopy-like, fully transparent bubble cockpit conjured images of jet fighters and space capsules, lending the car a strikingly otherworldly presence. Unlike anything on the roads of the 1960s, this seamless dome stretched over the entire passenger compartment, creating an immersive driving environment that brought a futuristic intimacy between man and machine. The concept's doors weren't doors at all. Rather, the entire canopy lifted upward, a design marvel that enhanced the car's aerodynamic profile but sacrificed ease of access, making it a challenge to simply climb in or out. Mechanically, the Astro I broke from muscle car conventions in an equally bold manner. Rather than a front-mounted V8, Chevrolet's engineers nestled an experimental flat sixth behind the driver, aiming to lower the center of gravity and improve handling dynamics. This was a daring move at a time when muscle cars were synonymous with bulky front engines and raw horsepower measured in big blocks and roaring V8s. The flat six was a symbol of innovation, but also a risky bet. Never before had Chevrolet placed this type of engine in such a radical mid-engine configuration, signaling a willingness to rethink everything about powertrain layout and balance. Beneath the body, the Astro I incorporated advanced ideas for chassis stiffness and lightweight materials, pushing engineering boundaries even further. The rear louvers weren't mere styling flourishes, they were functional components designed to channel airflow and cool the experimental engine tucked inside the rear bay. Its sculpted lines weren't just for show. They reflected an intense effort to minimize drag and maximize speed potential, setting a precedent for the aerodynamic efforts that would dominate car design in decades to come. Yet, for all its visionary brilliance, the Astro I was fundamentally a product of concept car idealism, a car automotive fantasy unconstrained by the practical realities of production, safety, and usability. The bubble canopy, while visually breathtaking, proved impractical for everyday use, creating ingress and egress challenges that would frustrate any driver. More critically, the vehicle lacked modern crash safety structures and protective cages, meaning it was completely unsuitable for public roads under even the most lenient regulations. At a time when safety standards were tightening and consumers demanded greater reliability and protection, the Astro I's design could never be certified or mass-produced. In the end, Chevrolet's executives and engineers reluctantly shelved the project, recognizing that while the Astro I captured imaginations and garnered admiration at auto shows, it was a star that could not shine beyond the showroom floor. It became a ghost of possibility, a reminder of what could be if creativity had free rein, but also a sobering example of the gulf between futuristic ambition and real-world constraints. Only a handful of prototypes were ever built, and after their dazzling debut tours, they were quietly relegated to archives, disappearing from public view, but never from automotive lore. The legacy of the 1967 Chevrolet Astro I is multifaceted and encapsulates the spirit of 1960s optimism, a belief that cars could be rockets, that technology and design could push beyond limits, that driving could be a journey into the future rather than a mundane chore. It also stands as a cautionary tale about the tension between radical innovation and practical application. For every visionary design like the Astro I, there were many others that never left the drafting table, halted by safety, cost, and regulatory realities. Today, the Astro I remains a treasured artifact among collectors and historians, a snapshot of a lost era of boundless creativity. Its aerodynamic shape and bold engineering continue to inspire designers and engineers who dream of blending art, speed, and technology. While it never landed in driveways or roared down highways, its presence echoes loudly in the annals of automotive history. A reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary ideas are those that never make it past the drawing board, yet shape the dreams and ambitions of generations to come. Would you have taken the risk to climb into this fragile, futuristic bubble, pilot a machine that looked like it came from another world, and embrace the thrill of something too wild and untested to survive the road? The Astro I dares us to imagine what driving could be when the rules are thrown out and pure creativity reigns supreme. The 1958 Packard Hawk supercharged prototype represents the final, desperate gasp of a once mighty American luxury automaker trying to reinvent itself amid a shifting automotive landscape that was growing increasingly unforgiving. Packard, a brand long synonymous with elegance, prestige, and refined craftsmanship, found itself on the precipice of collapse in the late 1950s, squeezed by financial struggles, rising competition, and the rapid modernization of the industry. In a bold attempt to revive its fortunes and capture new markets, Packard dreamed up the Hawk, a sleek, low-slung coupe powered by a supercharged V8 engine designed to compete with the continent's finest grand tourers, especially the exotic European marques that were becoming symbols of style, speed, and status worldwide. At a glance, the Packard Hawk was a radical departure from the company's traditional luxury sedans. Its dramatic aerodynamic shape fused sharp angular lines with smooth curves, capturing a futuristic aesthetic that echoed the jet age fascination with speed and modernity. The front end featured an aggressive grille and pronounced hood bulge that hinted at the raw power beneath, while the overall stance suggested a poised, nimble performer rather than a stately cruiser. The coupe's design was both a statement and a promise. Packard was aiming not just to survive, but to be reborn as a player in the high-performance luxury arena. Under the hood, the heart of the Packard Hawk was an ambitious engine package, a supercharged V8 that promised to deliver power and performance well beyond what traditional Packards had offered. This was a car meant to roar and race, to challenge the established European GTs like Jaguar's XK150 or Aston Martin's DB Mark III. The supercharger system aimed to boost horsepower substantially, offering drivers a thrilling blend of acceleration, speed, and grand touring capability. This powertrain was the company's attempt to pivot from old-world luxury to new-world excitement. But behind this vision lay a harsh reality. Packard was struggling financially, burdened by mounting debts and an eroding customer base that increasingly turned to Chevrolet, Ford, and imported brands for value and style. The automotive market was evolving rapidly, and Packard's infrastructure was no longer suited to keep pace. Worse still, tightening emissions regulations and growing government scrutiny meant that even the powerful supercharged engine faced an uphill battle just to meet the minimum standards for legal sale. The company simply lacked the resources to re-engineer, test, and certify such an ambitious powertrain under these new constraints. As a result, the Packard Hawk supercharged prototype never made it to production. Most of the prototypes, possibly fewer than a dozen, were destroyed or lost after Packard folded, leaving behind only faded photos and a handful of surviving concept pieces that automotive historians cherish as relics of what might have been. The car was a victim not just of technical and regulatory challenges, but of the collapse of the very company that dreamed it up. The Hawk became a symbol of a brand dying before its final star could fully shine. In hindsight, the 1958 Packard Hawk supercharged prototype embodies a poignant automotive tragedy, the clash between ambition and circumstance. It was a car born out of hope and desperation, crafted to rescue a brand on the brink, but ultimately doomed by forces far larger than horsepower or design innovation. The story of the Hawk reminds us that sometimes the fate of a car isn't decided by its engineering brilliance or aesthetic daring, but by the fragile economic and political ecosystem that nurtures or destroys automakers. For collectors and dreamers, the Hawk remains a bittersweet legend, a what-if, forever frozen in time. It represents not just a lost opportunity for Packard to reclaim glory, but a broader narrative about the volatility of the American automotive industry in a transformative era. The car asks us to reflect, what if the company had survived just a little longer? Could the Hawk have become an American answer to the great European GTs? Or was it always destined to be a magnificent ghost, a promise unfulfilled? Would you want to own a car with the soul of a fighter, a machine that represents the last breath of a fallen giant? The Packard Hawk supercharged prototype dares us to imagine dreams shattered by fate, yet immortalized by their boldness and beauty. The 1972 Alfa Romeo Scarabeo 2 is one of those rare, wild automotive dreams that seemed perfectly tuned to shake up the sports car world, but instead vanished almost as soon as it appeared, swallowed by the turbulent realities of economics and regulation. Conceived during a time when Alfa Romeo was chasing innovation to recapture its racing and sports car prestige, the Scarabeo 2 was a daring statement. A mid-engine, lightweight masterpiece designed to bring Italian flair and razor-sharp performance to an accessible price point, aiming directly at the cult-following Lotus Europa. At first glance, the Scarabeo 2 embodied everything a true sports car enthusiast would crave. Its body was a low-slung, aerodynamic marvel with aggressive, sharply sculpted lines that screamed performance and exotic design, unmistakably Italian in every curve. The car's ultralight tubular steel frame and compact mid-mounted engine promised nimble handling and an engaging driving experience that could challenge established sports cars, but without the exorbitant price tag. Alfa Romeo's engineers envisioned this as a machine to make the joy of driving accessible, a pure driver's car for those who loved speed, style, and agility. However, the Scarabeo 2 was not just a technical challenge, it was also born into a financial and regulatory storm. By the early 1970s, Alfa Romeo's finances were strained. The company was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy and desperately needed hits that could generate cash and rekindle enthusiasm among fans. At the same time, Italy and much of Europe were imposing stricter safety and emissions regulations that, while well-intentioned, made it increasingly difficult for such radical, lightweight sports cars to pass legal muster without expensive redesigns. The Scarabeo 2 found itself trapped in this crossroads. Its minimalist design, raw structural approach, and race-inspired safety features were no longer enough to meet the tightening safety laws, which demanded reinforced crash structures, energy-absorbing crumple zones, and other modern safety devices, all of which would have added weight and complexity, threatening the car's core philosophy of simplicity and lightness. Moreover, Alfa's worsening financial position meant the company neither had the funds nor the time to re-engineer the Scarabeo 2 to comply. The result was an abrupt death for what could have been a new chapter in Italian sports car history. Only 1 or 2 prototypes were completed, and these quickly vanished into the vaults of Alfa Romeo museums, preserved as testaments to the passion and creativity that almost broke free but ultimately failed under the pressures of accountants and regulators. The Scarabeo 2 is a perfect example of a brilliant idea cut down before it could reach enthusiasts, a car both too cool and too radical to survive the shifting landscape of the early 1970s. Today, the Scarabeo 2 remains a rare and mysterious gem for collectors and Alfa aficionados, a beautiful what-if that whispers stories of Italian ambition clashing with harsh realities. It represents a moment when pure driving pleasure and industrial constraints collided, leaving behind only ghosts and legends. Could the Scarabeo 2 have redefined affordable sports cars and saved Alfa Romeo's faltering fortunes? Or was it destined to be a fleeting spark, forever locked behind museum doors? It's a bittersweet reminder that in the automotive world, brilliance alone isn't always enough. Timing, money, and politics often decide the fate of even the most spectacular machines. Would you want to own a piece of that bold, fleeting rebellion against the ordinary? The Scarabeo 2 invites us to dream on.
The 1968 Ford Mustang Mach 2 concept represents one of the most captivating and tantalizing what-could-have-been stories in American automotive history. An audacious vision that dared to rewrite the very DNA of the Mustang at a pivotal moment in muscle car lore. Unlike the traditional front-engine, rear-wheel drive layout that defined the Mustang's heritage, the Mach 2 boldly embraced a mid-engine architecture, a design choice that was rare and revolutionary for American cars of the era. By moving the power plant behind the driver, Ford engineers aimed to transform the Mustang from a classic muscle pony into a razor-sharp sports car capable of matching the handling finesse and exotic appeal of European supercars like Ferrari and Lamborghini. From its inception, the Mach 2 was a masterclass in design and engineering innovation. Its sleek, aerodynamic silhouette was a dramatic departure from the more muscular, straightforward looks of standard Mustangs. The car's body flowed low and wide, with a fastback roofline that gently tapered into the rear deck, disguising the giant V8 engine nestled behind the cockpit. This setup promised more balanced weight distribution and improved cornering stability, a huge leap forward in performance dynamics for a car segment that had long prioritized raw power over finesse. Every line, every curve on the Mach 2 whispered of speed, precision, and futuristic ambition. Yet beneath the stunning form and groundbreaking engineering, the Mach 2 faced insurmountable practical and corporate hurdles. Ford's management was acutely aware of the Mustang's brand identity and immense popularity, built on the familiar formula of a front-engine muscle car. Shifting to a mid-engine layout risked alienating loyal customers and dealers who embraced the Mustang's traditional image. Moreover, the late 1960s marked a period of increasing federal regulations around emissions, safety, and insurance, all of which would have posed expensive challenges for a radical new model. The costs and risks associated with retooling production lines, developing new safety structures, and educating the market were judged too high. Consequently, the Mach 2 never moved past the concept stage. It was quietly tucked away into Ford's archives, known only to insiders and enthusiasts lucky enough to glimpse photographs or rare prototypes. The idea of a mid-engine Mustang was shelved indefinitely, as the company chose to double down on the proven formula that had already delivered immense commercial success. This cautious conservatism arguably saved the Mustang's sales in the short term, but also meant missing a chance to pioneer a transformative step in American sports car evolution. Had the Mach 2 made it to production, it could have revolutionized not only the Mustang, but the entire muscle car landscape. Imagine the ripple effects. Chevrolet scrambling to create a mid-engine Camaro, Dodge developing its own exotic Challenger, and the muscle car wars taking on a whole new level of technological sophistication. The Mustang might have leapt from being a beloved American icon to an international supercar legend decades before the mid-engine supercar craze truly caught on in the United States. Beyond the mechanical marvel, the Mach 2 symbolizes the eternal tension between innovation and tradition, between vision and risk. It embodies the story of a car that dared to dream far beyond its time, but was ultimately held back by corporate caution and the harsh realities of market forces and regulations. Today, as mid-engine Mustangs finally arrive, decades later in modern times, the Mach 2 stands as a ghostly precursor, a shimmering glimpse of what might have been frozen in time. Would you have had the courage to embrace this mid-engine Mustang, pushing its futuristic lines through winding mountain roads or roaring down drag strips? The Mach 2 challenges us to imagine a muscle car world where boldness trumped convention and where American automotive innovation took an unexpected leap into the future. It remains a haunting what if, a legend waiting quietly in the shadows, daring the next generation to pick up its mantle and finish the journey it began so daringly back in 1968.